All right, real happy to be joined by my next guest on the Sports Card Shop guest line. It's not his first time. This is his second appearance. I am going to actually see this gentleman this weekend in Springfield, Massachusetts. We are definitely going to be talking about that amongst other things. He might be the busiest man in the hobby. He might wear that belt. We're going to talk definitely about that and how he balances all that stuff out. But please welcome Rob Girard, sports card therapist.
John, how are you doing, my friend? It is a honor and a privilege to be on your show once again. I really look at you as like the godfather of hobby content, almost like James Brown in his prime. I picture you up on stage with the microphone, just kind of doing your thing.
Yeah, I like the Godfather reference. That's my favorite movie. So listen, you can't go wrong with James Brown either. So either way, that's I'll take that as a win-win. But like I said in the lead in there, I mean, I might be the oldest guy or one of them, but you're probably the busiest guy between your own content, Wolfpack content, now PWCC Sunday night watch party content. You're a dad, you're a husband, you have two young kids, you're a therapist, obviously, as your name entails. Two questions: how do you make time, and when do you sleep?
I mean, listen, I get most of my sleep except for Sunday nights. Sunday nights are the rough ones because I go on YouTube live and do a 2-hour show in partnership with PWCC like you said. So I get kind of fired up from that, and if it ends at 11:30, it usually takes me until about 12:30 or 1 to kind of wind down, and I'll go right to bed and just kind of lay there, and it takes me a while just to kind of wind down from that. But it doesn't feel like I'm that busy. And I think it's because no matter what I've done over the course of my life, I've always had a hobby. So I've been with my wife 15 years, and I've always had a hobby that has taken up a ton of real estate in my personal life. And she's always been, a good sport about that. So no matter what, I've always had huge hobbies. And when I, got back into the hobby, over 3 years ago now, she's like, this is just gonna be a phase. This is just gonna be a phase. I'm like, babe, you don't understand. Like, this was my childhood. I grew up doing this, and even, a couple times over the last 15 years, I did dip my toe back in the hobby, and I was in for 6 months, like, in 2010, and then kind of fell back out. 2013 came back in, fell back out, so, um, I heard a quote the other day from Michael Moynihan. He was on Cousins Collectibles, and he
Yep.
said he said, "I never left the hobby because I always had my cards. I just stopped buying for years." And that's kinda how I felt. That's still how I feel. When he said that, I was like, "Yes," because I don't feel like and I know I'm kinda going off on a tangent here, but I was actually just talking to Ken from Sports Card Lessons today on the phone, and I said that, there's guys like, John Newman, and there's other people that were making content, 4, 5, 6 years ago, before the pandemic, and I think, like, they almost look at, the people that came back in fully during the pandemic as, like, the new guys, and I don't know if we'll ever not be looked at as the new guys, but I was collecting in the '80s, I was collecting in the '90s, I held on to all my cards, I had everything, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't feel like the new guy, even though, I just fully came back in 3 years ago. I don't, I feel like I've been doing this a lifetime.
Well, I'll answer that question just for myself, Rob. I don't look at people like that. There's no pension plan here. This isn't teaching where you get tenure, right? And like you said, if you've always had your stuff, you might hit pause on buying and selling. Heck, I did that for 4 or 5 years, for as long as I've been in the hobby. So I'm welcoming to everyone. I don't really label people new or old. I was new. It was 1979, which dates me, but we all were new at some point. So what difference does it make, right? And so I don't look at it like that. And I don't care whether you came in yesterday or 40 years ago, right? Everyone's important in the hobby, and we need people in the hobby. If there no one's in the hobby, we're probably not talking about a hobby. We're definitely probably not doing this show. We probably wouldn't know each other. So I don't, again, there's no, I always say this, I'm sure there's no pension plan, whether I'm in it longer than someone else. It doesn't make me better or worse. The only thing it might make me is a little more experience, just because I'm old and I've done a lot of stuff, but not better, right? Just experience. And so that's my take. Obviously, I can only speak for myself. I'm sure what you said probably rings true for some others, where maybe they look at someone new and maybe not sort of a nice way. And that's unfortunate. It shouldn't really be like that. I don't like, if and when that happens, I don't like that it does occur. It'll never, as far as how I handle myself, I don't look at it like that. I may ask somebody just for content material, but other than that, it doesn't sway my opinion of them one way or the other, and it really shouldn't. And there's people, whether you do, 3 years back or whatever the case may be, you're doing big stuff. So it doesn't matter. There's no belt based on time served. So that's never been my approach. Now you mentioned, PWCC. It's sort of a late Sunday night for you. Have you has it altered your work schedule, or have you maintained the same thing, just maybe on a little less sleep?
No, yeah, I've maintained the same thing, just a little bit less sleep. It's been an incredible experience so far being able to partner up with them. You know, over the course of the last couple of years, I've experienced reasonable level of success with my podcast, and I never partnered up with anyone. I never agreed to any kind of sponsorships. You've never heard me read an ad on my show. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's just not anything that I've ever done. So when the PWCC thing came along, it's a brand that I trust. It's a brand that I respect. No one's perfect. They've had their bumps in the road, just like I've had my bumps in the road in life. So, but overall, though, they felt like it was a great situation for me just to continue to do what I love. It's like I get to sit there for 2 hours and bring on some of the greatest minds in the hobby in the vintage space, and really just talk with them about all these cards that are going on. I mean, every Sunday night I feel like I'm taking a doctorate class. I'm taking a PhD class for 2 hours on vintage cards. And I mean, vintage cards has really just turned into my absolute lane. And that started, I think, probably about 2 years ago is when I fully realized, like, what vintage is gives me feelings. It's almost like, when you meet a woman. It's like when you met your wife for the first time. It's like you get those butterflies, and you're feeling things you've never felt before. That's how I felt when I went to National in Rosemont, Illinois 2 years ago, and I was just surrounded by just hundreds of tables of vintage. And I spent almost an entire day just in that vintage section that was there right when you first walked in. And this is the lane where I just feel so much at home. And I'm a historian anyways. Like, I'm a big history buff, so not even outside of sports, but with sports. So it's like I've already really done my homework on players, teams. Like, I know this stuff. I'm a sports historian, just like a lot of us are. But for me, it's come up to, like, learning about the sets, and learning about which sets are infamous for being off-centered and miscut, and which sets get wrongly labeled as trimmed often. They'll get a grade
Yeah.
of trimmed, altered, even though, no, that was a factory miscut. And so it's like it's about learning those little nuances of the sets. But it's been incredible. I mean, my time in the hobby, back into the hobby so far, it's been I couldn't have dreamt it.
Piggybacking off what you said, Rob, in doing that show, it's also I feel like you're learning stuff too, right? We don't know everything. Even someone like myself who's been in it a long time, I learn stuff about the hobby every day as I should. Like the minute I stop learning, I really have to question what I'm doing. So talk about how that coverage has actually, helped you. Has it helped you? And has it changed your approach to what you want or what do you want to acquire?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It is. I'm going to tell you something that I just learned last night, or I just learned on Sunday night. Sorry, on the last Sunday night auction that I did. So we were looking at a 1933 Gaudi Jimmy Fox, and I didn't realize until last night what makes this card such a coveted card of Jimmy Fox is that was his triple crown year. So that was his triple crown year. Just like, you think about DiMaggio and his play ball, his play ball card when he won the triple crown. You think about Mantle in 56 with his 56 tops. The reason why that card is usually 4 to 5x what the Jackie Robinson is, and 7 8x with the Willie Mazes because it's their triple crown years, and something really cool that so you asked me, has it really been directing like what I've been picking up? And that's without a doubt it has. This is something that I had just posted, and for people watching on YouTube, they can see this, but I'll try to paint a
Yeah.
picture for the podcast
Okay.
listeners. So there are not many players that were featured as playing day years that were featured in both the T206 set and the 33 Gaudi set, which are arguably the two greatest baseball sets of all time. You could throw 52 tops in there, obviously, but those are the big three. Is the T206, which is 1909 between 1909 to 1911, the
Yep.
1933 Gaudi, and then the 52 tops. But there's very few players that were featured in both as players, the T206 and the 1933 Gaudi. So my first pickup that I had got, right, and I wasn't planning on doing this, but for those of you maybe not familiar with the Uncle Jimmy collection, so the Uncle Jimmy collection, this guy James, Uncle Jimmy, he was born and raised in New Jersey, never had kids, never married, and throughout his entire life, he got these incredible on-card autographs of all these vintage cards. So there's a 33 Gaudi Babe Ruth that he got autographed. I mean, everything you can think of. So when he finally passed away and his family, inherited all his cards, they had no idea what they were looking at, but they, found someone in the hobby that could really help them figure out like how to properly liquidate this collection basically. And this gentleman that they brought on board, he was a guy from I don't know if he worked for PSA or what, but he was able to, every single Uncle Jimmy card that came from that collection was able to get designated by PSA as the Uncle Jimmy collection. So when this card, I knew as a vintage person, for me it meant so much to get a card from the Uncle Jimmy collection, and they're impossible to get. You look on eBay right now and there's only one piece of memorabilia from the Uncle Jimmy collection, and it's a newspaper article that was signed by Ted Williams, and it was PSA slabbed, as the Uncle Jimmy collection because
Yep.
that was in his collection. But there's no cards at all available on eBay, really anywhere. All these cards have been purchased and tucked away in collections. People aren't getting rid of them. So I had the chance to pick up a Jack Quinn. And if you look at how gorgeous of a card this is a 1933 Gaudi. And if you look right on the PSA slab
There,
label, it
son.
says Uncle Jimmy
Yep.
collection. So that autograph is incredible. I mean, right in the perfect
Yeah.
place.
I mean, obviously it wasn't signed yesterday, but that's how crisp and,
Yeah.
and, and sharp it really is, Rob. So
So
yeah,
so I was able to find out that someone had an Uncle Jimmy card they were willing to move. So the gentleman was like, "Hey, listen, this guy that I know has this card. He's willing to move it, but there's a very big premium on it, so you're going to be
Sure.
paying for it. I don't care who you are, Rob, you're going to be paying for it. So he said, but what's really cool about it is, and he educated me on how he's actually featured in Gaudi and T206. So I bought this before it was in the mail, before I even had it in hand. I went online and bought the Jack Quinn T206. So now I
Yeah,
have both
the
Jack
matching pair.
Quinn's T206 and Gaudi. Um, and the Gaudi is the Uncle Jimmy collection. So yeah, it is completely, I don't want to say completely shifted my collecting, but the education it's brought me is incredible.
Yeah, and no doubt, and if it does change what you think, and there's nothing wrong with that too, a little bit, right? The more we're educated or we learn something new, right? That's a good thing. I've bought stuff just on something I've learned, and I don't think we have to feel like apologize or anything like that. Like I said, I try to learn something every day, and is it different, kind of highlighting some cards, and yet you're like, "Hey, I want to get this too," but now I'm kind of broadcasting to everyone like I'm opening the competition lanes. Is that a weird scenario?
You know, it is. It is, and you know what? People, no one's really asked me that before. I've talked about it before, with people, but no one's really asked me that on a show. So I would definitely be glad to discuss that. So I've been collecting vintage for years now. So all these cards I have, on the screen behind me, these are all cards I've had, well before anything to do with PWCC. So my content that I was putting out, right now on my podcast, I think in my YouTube show, I'm at episode 165, I think. So, I a lot of episodes in the bank, and most of my content was just naturally shifted toward vintage, even though there's definitely some modern, but I like to think that my show has a much more modern feel. I've listened to some podcasts where it's vintage based, and it just kind of like feels vintage based, but I think I've kind of figured out my own brand to make vintage almost feel like fresh. So I think that's a big part of the reason why PWCC approached me. Well, I know that's kind of what they said. They said, like, listen, we love what you're doing. We don't want you to change a bit. We just want you to start, doing our vintage auctions. And after meeting with them and their staff, and talking about what the game plan was, I was thrilled to be on board, thrilled. So yeah, I had people in the vintage community that message me, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because it's one of these things where I talk about vintage so much that, like, you could say I'm pumping vintage, but the thing is, like, I'm not selling any of my vintage,
Yeah.
and I have people in the vintage community that love that vintage. They feel like vintage cards are getting some really good exposure, and I'm proud to feel like I might be playing a small role in that. So that's really cool. But I have people in the vintage community that I'm friends with, and they say, "Man, Rob, I feel like 6 months ago, I was getting steals on PWCC, and now I'm paying above comps on every single auction." And I'm telling you, every single Sunday, just this past Sunday, I mean, we're seeing records broken every single weekend for vintage on PWCC. It's unbelievable. I mean, they're smashing pandemic hype prices, Sunday night, a 1954 Ernie Banks rookie, PSA 7, the all-time high, like during like the height of the pandemic, was 9,400 for a PSA 7. This PSA 7 Sunday night went for 12,800, I think. So went for like 3K over,
Yep.
25% over. So so yeah, it is one of those things where it's like, man, I'm looking at these cards, but I really want to discuss the beauty of these cards, though. I really want to, and I'll have guys message me like, "Hey, don't talk about that Mickey Mantle tonight." I'm going for it. And I'm like, listen, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. Like I have to. I mean,
You
that's
can make some side deals here, Rob. Like, hey,
no,
what?
no, yeah, no,
I'm
definitely
kidding.
not.
I'm
No,
kidding.
I know.
But it's funny though. But that's that's the thing. Like it's but you enjoy it. Your passion's there so much that you even if maybe it prevents you from getting that card,
Yeah.
you still have enough passion and enjoyment for what you do, and it's worth more, and you can still always maybe get it down the line. You just keep it on your list
And you
if
know what's
that's
cool
the
too
case.
is what's cool too is because I'm really digging, I am digging into these auctions every week. I'm just taking my time. I'm looking through all these vintage cards that are going up, because I'm highlighting anywheres between 75 and 100 of them that I'm going to favorite and that we're going to highlight over the course of 2 hours and watch, right? So I'm digging into these cards that I would have never been looking for. So I actually just got this in the mail today. Um, this is a card I won, I think, 2 weeks ago on the PWCC auction. So when it comes to basketball, the first, and I actually just posted this a few nights ago, the first pack pulled NBA official set is 48 Bowman. If you look over my shoulder,
Yeah.
you can see the George mic in.
Yep.
I have the mic in right here. Right, this is the first big official NBA set, 48. But on the PWCC auction, I was able to find this 1936 Cosmos Olympia card. So this is an Olympic card from 1936 of them playing basketball
That's cool.
in the grade of a SGC5. I mean, talk
Yeah.
about talk about a effing collectible.
And listen, Rob, you like you said, you love history even outside the hobby, outside of sports. It's funny when you were saying that I was nodding because I'm the same way. And if you know anything about the '36 Olympics, huge backstory there. With Hitler and
Hitler, Jesse
Germany.
Owens.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and that's the Olympics it was at. So there's a lot of gears involved with that Olympics and that card
In
from
this set,
from
yeah, this set too, this 1936 Cosmos set, there's a lot of Hitler cards in this set. If there's a lot of Hitler
yeah,
cards, there's a lot of Jesse Owens, and there's very few basketball ones. But I saw the
yeah,
basketball one, and I'm like, it's one of these cards that I think that people are just like, it's just really flying below the radar. Everyone's
yeah,
looking at everything else, and I see this card, and I'm like, I'm gonna grab this card. Like, no, like how is it this cheap? So I end up grabbing this card, and this is going to be a really cool piece just to have in my case when I set
yeah,
up at shows that I can talk to people about, and that I'm not going to move.
yeah. No,
It's one of those things that's not.
conversation cards.
Yeah,
Conversation cards, I call them.
yeah.
We're going to segue. That's a good segue point into talking about this weekend's festivities. But before we get into that, we were talking before we recorded this segment, and you were sharing a story. I asked you if you have two young kids. Your daughter is older than your son, who's very young, and I asked you if your daughter is showing any interest, and you shared an interesting story, and I wanted to make sure if you don't mind doing it again, kind of talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So my daughter, who is going to be 3 in June, she's my everything. She's like, so like when people talk about like the father and daughter relationship, like, yeah, it is absolutely that way. And you know, whenever I've gotten like big cards, as long as it's slabbed, I'd let her hold it, and I would take pictures of her kind of holding it and looking at it. That way, years from now, when she's older, like we can look back and be like, "Oh my god!" There's a picture I had posted on my Instagram a few months back, and she's holding my 1951 Bowman mantle.
I seen that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and we both are wearing the same shirt with
yeah,
this
that was
card on there, so it was amazing, and she was, like, giddy with laughter in that picture. It's one of my favorite pictures, absolutely. So she knows all about daddy's cards. She knows daddy's cards, and, she, like, calls them CODs. So it's almost like she has like a Massachusetts accent or something. So Daddy's Cods. So what I did a few weeks ago was I went on eBay and I saw the big Disney craze, right? Everyone's talking about Disney, those Disney boxes that got pumped to the moon, and now they're probably going to be selling for pennies on the dollar in the next month or two, right? Very sad thing. It's just like the WWE Prism releases. That's why I never try to fall into FOMO, and I always wait. Like
Yeah,
even if I wanted to get one of those Disney boxes, like I'd be a fool
yeah,
to try to buy them, in the first week out. So, but that did plant what seeing that did plant the seed in my head. And I said, you know what? I wonder if they have any Disney Frozen cards because even though Frozen is 10 years old, my daughter is going to be 3. So she's just discovering Frozen this last year. She absolutely loves it. So I looked on eBay and I found a guy who was selling the main 6 characters. Right, there's main 6 characters in them, and he had all 6 characters in PSA 10s, PSA 9s, and PSA 8s, and the serial numbers on them and their PSA graded, the serial numbers are like 7 to blah blah blah, which means they were literally just graded probably within the last month. So he probably just played the game that everyone else plays, right? Get as many graded as you can, and if you hit 10s, that should pay for everything. So the 10s, he was selling the 6 10s for $600. I'm like, well, I'm not spending that. And then I think he was selling the 6 9s for $400. Then he was selling the 6 8s. I think he was selling them for 100. And I said, okay. So I message him, yada, yada, yada. And I end up getting them for $60. So I get them in the mail, and, PSA graded. I let my daughter open the box because she loves opening everything, whether if it's mail, if it's an Amazon box, she wants to be the one to open it. When she saw those Frozen cards, her eyes just lit up like nothing I've ever seen. And now they're, in the family room mixed in with her toys. Those are her cards, which are
yeah.
really cool. So
That's awesome, and you might have created a monster right there that day, or a future one, I should say. So,
I
uh,
know,
but
I
that,
know.
but that's awesome, right? As a dad, and those, and my son's a little bit into the cards, Rob, not in the same fashion I am, but he has a collection of his own, and
Who
it's
does your
always
son
great.
see?
He, believe it or not, he's a huge Tim Tebow guy, believe it or not. So he likes
Awesome.
like he was a high school quarterback. He wore number 15. He met him. He got a Florida
Wow.
jersey signed by him. So he's a Tebow guy, even though Tebow's now on the broadcast side
You
full
know what
time. But
though? Tebow cards still go for money. If
yeah,
you
they
come
do.
across like a good Tebow card, you're going to be paying up for that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
crazy.
it is great. Little less now, but you're exactly right. They're not
Yeah.
for someone that didn't have a storied, professional career. I mean, he's one of the greatest college quarterbacks of all time, but didn't get there on the next level. Stuff still, like you said, exactly right. It does go for more than you would have thought, but it's just sort of the legend of Tebow
Yeah.
and Urban Meyer and all that stuff
And
that
Aaron
goes with him. So,
Hernandez,
yeah, him too. Yeah, yeah. Thankfully, he doesn't collect him,
who
but
by the way, grew up
yeah,
about 15 minutes from me. And it's
yeah,
crazy that I even mentioned Aaron Hernandez. Hold on. Literally right by my side, I have an Aaron Hernandez RPA.
yeah. How about that?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
listen, man.
it's
Very sad case what happened
yeah.
with him.
Listen. We can you can talk about the off-field stuff, but when you talk about just the on-field stuff, had that worked out a different way, he could have been arguably the greatest tight end to play in the NFL. And that you can't regardless how you feel about everything else.
Yeah,
That when we're just talking the football end, I mean, he was a tremendous player. Just that's the tragic part of the story, but was obviously the people who've lost their lives, but
yeah,
himself included. That could have been a different kind of story, and no one can argue with the talent that he possessed. So I hear you there, and again, your relationship being where you are is going to be different than me sitting here in Syracuse anyway. So that's just that's how it goes. So, but yeah, that team was something else too, and so yeah, he's a Tebow guy, but he picks his spots, and I'll pick him up stuff here and there. But let's segue into this show's out on Friday. If you're listening to this on show release day and everything works out okay, I safely arrived from driving in Springfield, Massachusetts. I'll be checking out the basketball hall. I've never been there, so I'll do that on Friday. But you were gracious enough to invite me to the show, which is there on Saturday, and then following the show. There will be a hobby panel moderated by you, and I'm happy to be on the panel with the other distinguished guests as well, and looking forward to it. I've never been to this show. You obviously have. For me, I guess, and everyone else listening. Kind of give your synopsis of what this show, what it entails, what it's like. Talk about the panel and all that other stuff.
Yeah, definitely, man. And listen, no need to thank me for getting on the panel because you being on the speaker panel at the Basketball Hall of Fame after the big Springfield show right before trade night is absolutely something that you have earned. So nothing has been given to you, my friend. You have earned that at the very, very least. I mean, your perspective, your knowledge of the hobby, everything overall. I feel like when I look at the panel guests, you absolutely bring something incredibly unique. And when you look at the guests who we're going to have on this hobby panel at the Basketball Hall of Fame Saturday night, April 8th, 2023. It starts at 6 p.m. So we have John Newman from Sports Card Nation podcast. We have Chris Costa from Card Vault, who's huge, right? I mean, that's huge in the Northeast. Here's a guy that created quite a company. Opened up a card store right outside Patriot Stadium. Opened up a second card store inside the Mohegan Sun Casino in Connecticut, is probably going to be opening up a third card show inside the Boston Garden where the Celtics play. Just unbelievable what they've been able to do. We're also going to have Mike Kantz from MC Sports Cards, who is arguably one of the biggest eBay consigners on eBay. MC Sports Cards. He's going to be on the panel. We have our good friend Ken from Sports Card Lessons, who is going to be talking about things from a dealer perspective, and he's a teacher, and his main focus on his podcast is just talking about the lessons that he's had to learn the hard way and some the easy way in the hobby. We have Hobby Shark, who has turned into one of these hobby watchdogs and one of the biggest, most known, most controversial hobby watchdogs in the hobby. And that's something I feel like we could do an entire episode on, is just talking about hobby watchdogs, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yep.
Because even though I think I'm guilty of, you know, I being overly positive sometimes and just trying to focus on the good of the hobby and almost like putting on blinders. I've been educated by some people, that are in that hobby watchdog space, and just in terms of like, listen, you can do that, you can be positive, but it's almost, you do have a certain responsibility to report the truth. And it's so I've kind of, I've sat back and said, you know what, okay, touche. And so having him there is going to be really good. And then last but not least, we have Jonathan, who is basketball card guy. And Jonathan is someone that was putting out content before the pandemic and kind of has a cult following in himself, of people. So I think it's going to be a really, really interesting mix on the panel. And in my opinion, John, you are absolutely right there where you belong, and I cannot wait to throw questions at you guys and to take questions from the audience, because that's what happens. We have someone walking around with the microphone, and as hands get raised, I call on people, and someone walks up to them with the microphone, and they ask the panel questions. And the first time we did it, it was an incredible experience. This is going to be our second time doing it. This will not be the last. So as far as the Springfield show goes, the show is it's a great show. It's in a great location. It's a huge venue, so there's a couple hundred tables that are going to be there. I'm quite certain that you are you going to be set up next to me?
That's the word I'm sort of getting, the vibe I'm sort of getting is that's going to be the case.
I
So I
hope
don't I
so.
don't want to say I don't want to say with 100% certainty, but
Yeah,
that's
I
the
hope
gut
so.
feeling. Yeah,
Because let me
that
tell
would
you,
be fun.
John from the New England Card Show, and his company Primetime Cards. John has always taken care of me. We have a great relationship. He is someone that is hungry. He's made a name for himself and his brand in the hobby. I mean, the fact that he was able to think about it. If we were sitting here listening to a podcast or looking at content creators, and they're sitting there hosting trade nights and panel discussions at like the Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, we would be like, what? Or like
Yeah,
Cooperstown, we'd be like, oh my God. So it's almost like, I have to pinch myself sometimes and say, don't take this for granted, Rob. Like, this is
yeah.
really, really cool that we're doing this. So, John has just built such a great reputation, and he's always looked out for me. And I know, as soon as you walk in that massive room of the show, usually my table is right there front and center. So I'm hoping that you're going to be right there with me. Um, it's a good show. You're going to have so many different types of vendors, so many different types of dealers. If you're looking for sports cards, baseball, hockey, golf, tennis, Pokemon, vintage, modern, super modern, everything is there. Everything is there. And the cool thing is too, is the show ends at 5, and the Basketball Hall of Fame is about 1 mile away. It's literally a 3-minute
Yeah,
drive from there. So you have an hour in between the show ending and then to get over to the hall for the panel discussion.
that's awesome. And just first off, thanks for the kind words. I don't no, no, I know what you said, and I appreciate it. I don't walk around like that though, Rob. I don't feel like any sort of entitlement. So when you're invited to that stuff, it's always humbling. I try to go to as when that occurs. I try to get to as much of that as possible. So I want that's why I say I appreciate that. You know,
Well, John,
um,
last time I saw you at National, though, I saw you get pulled in on a chariot. So that you're
You don't
telling
want
me
to see me in a toga, and I promise for those listening or going to the show that won't be the case because
you were
that would
literally
not be
sitting
funny.
on
So
a chair and people were holding it up and walking you in.
no, and God bless them. Listen, there's 260 pounds here. I feel sorry for those people if they ever had to do such a thing. But no, all sincerity, Rob. I know I've said this not on the show, but I'm going to thank you in person too. So if you think
Yeah.
you're done hearing thank yous, there's more where this is coming from because like you said, you said it the best yourself, right? You can't take stuff like this for granted. And so when things like that happen and you get to be even a small part of it, it's just very cool, right? If you love the hobby, if you're passionate about it, why wouldn't you want to try to do as much as you can? If I've ever said no, it's more of a logistics thing than a lack of wanting to do it than anything else. And so,
Well,
uh,
yeah, and you
it,
can't say yes to everything. There's been plenty of things in the hobby that, unfortunately I've had to turn
yeah,
down, going on people's podcasts, going to different trade nights and stuff. It's like I can't do everything, it goes back to that balance thing. And the thing is one of the hardest things in the world to say is no. It's
yeah,
hard to say
no, it's
no to
true.
people, and when you are busy like you are, and when you're busy like I am, and when you're busy like a lot of the people in our hobby, a lot of your listeners have families. A lot of your listeners,
Yeah,
and they give up their spare time, they're taking 40 minutes out of their day to listen to your show right now. And
yeah,
you know sometimes the hardest thing to say is no, but sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to do that for your own sanity. You're saying no so that you can say yes to your family.
Yeah, no doubt. Well said. You know, in your synopsis too, it sounds like there'll be something for everyone at the show, no matter what you collect, who you collect, how you collect. You know, 200 plus tables. You're going to find something you desire or want. Then you got the panel, then you got the trade show. It's going to be a jam packed Saturday. Hope to see. I know you feel this way too, Rob. Hope to see a lot of people there. It's going to be fun. You know, I'm gonna be dragging on Sunday, but it's going to be worth it for the fun on Saturday. I appreciate you. Speaking of being busy, you like you said, and I call you the busiest guy in the hobby. I appreciate you coming on and making some time for us. As always, I give our guests kind of the final word. Give out any socials, website, anything you want to get out there. It's only fair and right. So take your time and get that stuff out there.
No, I appreciate it. It's sports card therapist all across the board. All you gotta do is type that in. I'm sure you'll find me. John, again, thank you very much for really, being, one of the guys that has truly paved the way for us to be able to make podcasts and for there to be an audience to find them. There's a few guys who I always, really give my flowers to, and a couple guys I consider close friends, and one of them is you on the podcast side. Really laying that foundation and laying that groundwork down. And and I've heard you talk about before in your podcast how your first few episodes were like recorded through the phone, and you would never want to go back and listen to them and whatnot. But I tell you though, listen, there were still people listening back then, and you were building the
Mm.
foundation for all content creators back then. And then I think of someone like Jeremy Lee, who has really, laid the foundation for doing these these YouTube watch party auctions, and I've told him that before and given him his flowers and just said like thank you, man, because if it wasn't for you, I don't know if PWCC would have been looking for someone like me. So, I think we're all kind of here off the backs of each other and the people that came before us.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I agree, and I appreciate those sentiments. And there was people even before me too. So I don't want it's a fraternity, right? We're all in this together. You should try to help each other as much as you can. And anyone that does this, as you well know, right, knows it's not as easy as it sometimes appears. An episode might be 40 minutes, an hour, but there's a little more time than what you actually hear. You know that very well yourself with research, editing, and all that other stuff. And so I appreciate all content creators just because of the work that goes in it. And so to be mentioned with anybody really is I appreciate that. So looking forward to seeing you here very shortly, Rob, and in the flesh, and having
Yeah.
some fun. And encourage everyone else out there, if you're near the Springfield, Massachusetts area, or even if you're not and you want to take a road trip, come on down. And just real quick too, wanted to mention before we kind of get off the air, that panel, you do need tickets to get in. You can get those tickets to coming, I've been told, to Rob's table. So see Rob or myself, and we might be right next to each other. So either or, get your ticket to that hobby panel discussion, which is going to be a real fun time, and hopefully get some great audience participation and questions as well. Obviously,
Absolutely. And let me ask you, are you going to have the 48 Jackie there with you?
I don't take that.
No?
I don't, because I'm not going to sell it, right? So like,
What
I
if
don't
you
know.
had what if you had the chance to upgrade it though and you didn't bring it?
Yeah, I don't know. You know what my fear is, Rob, is in my old age, I get clumsy, I drop it, something stupid happens, and it's gone, right? Or even worse, right? Somehow it gets lifted. Not that I'm pretty careful with that, but I just always think the worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
So, if I was selling it for sure, but I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
really, but I get asked that a lot, I don't know, man. I'll have to think about it. So you got gears a little bit turning, but probably not, just for my safety more more than others. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's gonna be looking forward to it, and again, hope to see a lot of folks there. And I appreciate you making some time for the show today.
Thank you, John. Love you, and I love the content, man. Keep it up.
Well, right back at you, brother. We'll see you soon.